Hello, y'all, and welcome back. As I record this, it is July of 2024. 5 years ago exactly, I was going through the special agent selection process for the FBI. And at the end of that process, in very late 2019, I had to decide between becoming an FBI agent, starting my training at Quantico, and remaining in the job that I just very recently taken here at San Antonio College. Obviously, I stayed at SAC, and I'm very glad I did, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't sometimes think, how would my life be different had I accepted this job with the FBI and gone off to some other city, presumably. And all of us have situations like this that we think of, situations where we come to a fork in the road in our life. We have to make a major decision, job we take, school we go to, person we marry. And all of us, I should think, what if I decided differently? What if things had worked out differently? What would the world be like? Not only do we have one such thing, I think we probably have many things like that. And the older we get, the more of those, ways the world might have been we have that we think about. These are what philosophers call possible worlds, ways the world might have been. And they're going to be front and center in the argument that I'm presenting in this module, which is the first of several arguments we'll be looking at in this and subsequent modules for the existence of God. The argument I'm going to be presenting in this module is Anselm's ontological argument, so called because it draws its structure and nature from ontos, the Greek word for being, that is to say, not from any particular being, any particular phenomenon in reality, say the existence of the universe or morality or consciousness, but just from being itself. If that sounds incredibly abstract and metaphysical, that's because it is. But I have worked very hard over the last 15 years to make this generally accessible, so I think, despite the fact that it's very abstract, you'll understand it as we go through it. Now, the version of the argument I'm going to be presenting is itself an updated version of Plantinga's fully modalized version of the ontological argument, based on conversations that I had with Alvin Plantinga when I had the good fortune of being his colleague, which I did for several years. We had offices next door to each other. So let's begin the ontological argument by defining some terms. So the first term we need to define is possible. I referred to this earlier when I talked about possible world just a moment ago. So possible, when we use it in ordinary language, is almost always used to mean either feasible, that's to say able to be done easily or conveniently, or physically possible, consistent with current physical laws. So for instance, if I say to my students, hey, we had to skip a couple days, some people missed class, I had to be out, so we're going to do a makeup session, and we're going to do it at 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Is it possible for you to make that? My students would no doubt answer with a resounding, no, it's not possible. But if I said, you have to be there, your life depends on it, can you physically, make it into the room? Obviously they would say yes. In the first sense, they're taking possible in what's conversationally implied there in the sense of feasible, right? Is this something you can do easily or conveniently? Which obviously it's not. They have other commitments. But in the second sense, they're using it in the sense of physical possibility. Is it consistent with physical laws? Could you physically do it? Obviously. So let's take another example here. So it's impossible for me to, say, bench press 1,000 pounds. I know this. Physically impossible. But even as I say those words, you can imagine this happening. You can picture this physically impossible thing happening, which means that it's not something that involves a contradiction. So it's not an incoherent concept. So it's possible in the sense in which we're going to be using this term possible going forward in this argument, that is to say broadly, logically possible or metaphysically possible. So to say something's possible in this third sense, this most relevant sense, means that it could happen or could have happened. In other words, it doesn't involve a contradiction. So anything that's coherent, does not involve a contradiction, is possible, including the contents of all of those possible worlds. The world, if you had decided differently at all those different points, or you had to make some decision, large or small. That's our first term, possible. We then move to our next term, which is contingent. Contingent means that something could not have happened. So could not happen or could not have happened. You see this term, or at least I used to see it a lot when I was job hunting, in job postings. They'd say this job is offered contingent on funding. What does that mean? Well, who's supposed to get the job? The best candidate. And the best candidate will get the job unless admin pulls the plug and at the last minute says, look, we don't have funding for that position available anymore, call off the job search. In that case, the best candidate does not get the job because it's a contingent fact that anybody gets the job. So it doesn't have to happen. It could not happen. Now, most of the things that we think of, if not all the things that we think of when we think of things that exist, either occurrences that have happened or physical objects that exist, are contingent in their existence. So it's a contingent fact that I'm recording this video right now. It's a contingent fact that you're watching it. Contingent fact that you are taking this class, or that the educational institution you're attending exists, or for that matter, that the world exists. Just about everything you can think of is contingent. It didn't have to be that way. It could have been otherwise. So that's our second term. Now, the third term we're looking at is necessary, and necessary is the opposite of contingent. Necessary means it can't not happen. It must happen. It absolutely must happen. But if everything that you can think of, say me having hands, or I was going to use the example from presidential politics, but I realize it's ill-advised. That's too controversial. Let's just say the United States being founded. If all that's contingent, then what is necessary? What could not possibly be otherwise? Well, the best example of this that you can use is 2 + 2 = 4. So mathematical truths of all kinds are necessarily true. 2 + 2 simply can't fail to be 4. It must be 4. And if you say, well, I could imagine 2 + 2 being 5, my response is, no, you can't. That's empty boasting. You're doing what the kids call capping right now. You just can't imagine. It's incoherent to imagine these mathematical truths being otherwise. So a square is a plane figure with 4 equal sides. It has to be. If it's not a plane figure with 4 equal sides, it's not a square. Similar to this, definitional truths are also necessary. So a bachelor is an unmarried male. This is true in all possible worlds. So worlds where there are no men, where the women decide they don't need us and they just get rid of us and they have a good time without us. There are no men, a fortiori no bachelors. Doesn't matter. It's still true that if you had an unmarried male, that would be a bachelor. And if you had a married male, it couldn't possibly be a bachelor. If he's married, he's just not a bachelor. Might be other things, but not a bachelor. So we have these terms, these broadly definitional terms, in addition to mathematical terms. Now, most importantly, to be necessary means to be true in all possible worlds. Okay? So it can't not be the case, must be the case, is true in all possible worlds. What does this mean? Well, take these contingent facts. Supposing that you had decided differently in that big decision. Supposing you weren't watching this video. Supposing you had gone to a different school. Would 2 + 2 still be 4 in those possible worlds? Obviously, yes. For a necessary truth, no matter how you spin the world or present the world, they're always going to be true. And this is very important going forward. To be necessary in one world is to be necessary in all worlds. No matter what way the world might have been, 2 + 2 is still going to be 4. Square is still going to be a plane figure with 4 equal sides. Now that we have these terms defined, we will move in the next video to the biggest and most hotly contested term that we need to define, which is, of course, God. I'll see you there.